Good morning, students. In the last class, we had studied about the concept of food chain and food web. Now, in today's class, I'll be talking about the concept of trophic levels. Now, in the previous class, you had seen that initially we have the producer producing the food. From the producer, we had the primary consumer taking the food. The secondary consumer is feeding on the primary consumer, and the tertiary consumer is feeding on the secondary consumer. So basically it is producer, primary consumer, secondary consumer, tertiary consumer. So now all these levels, the producer, the primary consumer, the secondary consumer, the tertiary consumer, all these are levels, and these levels are called as the trophic levels. At each trophic level, there is transfer of food energy. I think I have introduced you to this topic a bit. So in every level of the trophic, there is transfer of energy. Transfer of food energy, you can say. So the first trophic level is always the producer. As you know, the producer has to produce the food, then only the consumer can feed upon it. So the first trophic level has to be the producer. Then comes the primary consumer, secondary consumer, and tertiary consumer may come in many cases. Now in the exam there might be a question that why does more trophic levels do not exist, like tertiary, maybe why does it does not exist beyond that, like quaternary or like more than that. Now at each trophic level what you see is the energy consumed by the organism goes on decreasing. Say 100 units was there in a producer, but that same energy will not go to the primary consumer. From the primary consumer, the same energy will not go to the secondary consumer. I'll just explain you in the next slide that I have about that concept. You just remember that the food energy that goes from one trophic level to the next trophic level always decreases. The food energy does not remain the same. इसका मतलब ये है कि प्रोड्यूसर से जितना एनर्जी मिला है ऑर्गेनिज्म को, प्राइमरी कंज्यूमर को उतना नहीं मिलेगा. कुछ एनर्जी एनवायरनमेंट में लॉस्ट हो जाएगा. देयर विल बी सम एनर्जी व्हिच विल बी लॉस्ट इन द एनवायरनमेंट. ओनली सम पार्ट ऑफ द एनर्जी फ्रॉम द प्रोड्यूसर विल गो टू द प्राइमरी कंज्यूमर. सिमिलरली प्राइमरी कंज्यूमर को जब सेकेंडरी कंज्यूमर खाएगा, सारा एनर्जी प्राइमरी कंज्यूमर से सेकेंडरी कंज्यूमर में ही जाएगा. Only some % of energy will go from the primary consumer to the secondary consumer. So this is the concept of the trophic level. Now I'll tell you how does energy flow in this trophic level. As I just now explained to you that green plants are basically the producers. और green plants जब sunlight से energy लेते हैं, as you know, green plants sunlight से energy लेना ही पड़ेगा because they will do photosynthesis. So green plants जब sunlight से energy लेते हैं in the form of solar energy, sunlight से सिर्फ 1% energy वो लेते हैं. They take only 1% of solar energy from the sun. The green plants they take only 1% of solar energy from the sun. बाकी energy वो नहीं ले पाता है, सिर्फ 1% ही energy ले पाता है सारे green plants. So you can imagine कितना solar energy है हमारे पास available. Solar energy is available in plenty to us. Only 1% is taken up by the plants. और उसी 1% को plant उसको food में convert करता है photosynthesis से. Plant converts that 1% energy into food by the process of photosynthesis. Now that means plant is the producer. As you know, plant is the producer. Now from the producer, if the primary consumer feeds on the producer, only 10% energy will go from the producer to the primary consumer. जब प्राइमरी कंज्यूमर प्रोड्यूसर को खाएगा, प्रोड्यूसर से सिर्फ 10% एनर्जी प्राइमरी कंज्यूमर को जाएगा. सिमिलरली जब सेकेंडरी कंज्यूमर प्राइमरी कंज्यूमर को खाएगा, सिर्फ 10% एनर्जी सेकेंडरी कंज्यूमर को जाएगा। तो यानी कि 90% एनर्जी एट ईच ट्रॉफिक लेवल इज लॉस्ट टू द एनवायरमेंट। एनवायरमेंट में लॉस्ट हो जाएगा, 90% एनर्जी यूटिलाइज नहीं होगा। एट ईच ट्रॉफिक लेवल सिर्फ 10% एनर्जी यूटिलाइज होगा। जैसे कि यू कैन सी हियर इन दिस डायग्राम, in the producer it is shown here that 1000 units are there, 1000 units, producer के पास 1000 units है। तो प्राइमरी कंज्यूमर के पास कितना जाएगा? 1000 का 10%। प्लीज रिमेंबर 1000 का 10% सिर्फ प्राइमरी कंज्यूमर में जाएगा, दैट इज 100 यूनिट्स। फिर प्राइमरी कंज्यूमर से सिर्फ 10% सेकेंडरी कंज्यूमर में जाएगा, दैट इज 100 का 10% यानी कि 10 यूनिट्स। फिर से जब टर्शियरी कंज्यूमर सेकेंडरी कंज्यूमर को खाएगा, ओनली 10% एनर्जी विल गो, दैट मीन्स 10 का 10% हो गया आपका 1। सो 10% डिक्रीज ऑफ एनर्जी टेक्स प्लेस एट ईच ट्रॉफिक लेवल। 10% ही एनर्जी ट्रांसफर होता है, 90% लॉस हो जाता है। इसीलिए दिस लॉ इज कॉल्ड एज द 10% लॉ। Because 90% energy is lost, only 10% energy flows from one trophic level to the next trophic level. That is why this law is called as the 10% law. So that means there is decrease in the food energy from each trophic level to the next trophic level. So this law is very important from the exam point of view. You must remember that 90% energy is lost to the environment, 10% energy flows from one trophic level to the next trophic level.